And we are live. How's it going, everyone? There is no point at which we're not back, apparently, because every time we're back, right? I mean, there's just no way of putting it otherwise. So we are in a state of consistently back. We are back with civil offense yet again. My name is Ahmed, and today we are talking about whether modern social issues, particularly the change in intersexual dynamics, I should say, meaning the way men and women interact socially, are these a product of the state? And so, acknowledging a social issue doesn't automatically mean taking a side on it. So I'll let Ancat, give his position during the show. But, me personally, I obviously have a position on this, and that will yet again be made evident here shortly. But yes, I am here with Ancat, aka Kevin Gates, because bro has two phones. How are you doing today, Ancat?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Not really much else to say. I'm just glad that we're continually back and finally streaming together yet again.
Yes. Last time we did that, I believe, was just recently with your 100 subscriber special.
Hell yeah.
And you're still growing. You're getting good guests on your show.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to have a lot more guests on. Actually, I was thinking of having you on next if you're down, but I don't know
Let's go.
it'll probably be later in April though. So
Yeah, I do have now for everybody, we haven't even gotten into this stream yet, but I do have a stream coming this Thursday evening at 6:00, and you will actually like perhaps the content of this. Should I say discussion? I suppose I don't necessarily want to say debate, but yes, we will have. I guess I'll just let it go. What we have here. We will be having Esso on with a formidable opponent, but I will keep that part a little hidden until we actually get into it, because I feel like that part just has to be announced once it happens. But it will be on objectivism and libertarianism. So if you guys would like, tune in Thursday, 6 p.m. EST, back on this channel. We'll be here with that. But for now, we are actually going into today's topic. But real quick, we have oddities and rarities. He's saying, good evening. Good evening to you, sir. And so he says, thank you for streaming slightly earlier so I can watch in Britbangistan. I actually kind of like this time. It feels like the day hasn't completely ended yet, but it was more so just a scheduling thing. This worked out for us. It is a Saturday. I don't know that Saturday night would be as good as evening. Perhaps this is a preferable time. Let's see. Let's see. I like to sup from the stream. And then we have JC saying, sup, what's up? All right.
howdy.
Now, for the announcements real quick, before we get into everything else, go to ahmedmali.com if you so please. Sign up for my email list for the latest updates. I have not sent out an update in a little bit, but I'll definitely send one for the upcoming stream that I have, just so that everybody on there is up to date with what's going on with the show. Check out Civil Offense on Rumble, Amazon, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. And this is actually my first night streaming to Twitter and Instagram. So I hopefully they're working correctly, but it does say StreamYard says that I have the streams up there. So people that are perhaps tuning in from Instagram, on the Civil Offense Instagram now, the issue with it is that it really only lets me stream there for an hour. Apparently, that's consistent with Instagram live streams. Apparently, StreamYard is saying yes, they want Instagram to change this, but for now, there's only an hour. So if it hits 8:00 and the show's over on there, it's still going on here most likely, because I don't think we're just going to be here for an hour. But yeah. If not, you could just tune in now, Civil Offense on YouTube. If you are on the X stream or Twitter stream, I don't even know why I just called it that, but it's because the logo is just there on the side for me to look at. But hey, you'll probably be on here for the entirety of the stream, because I don't think X has any sort of limits that I'm aware of. But yeah, we're also on YouTube and Rumble, as I mentioned before. But yeah, so DM me. If you'd like to join the Discord server for Civil Offense at AnarchoNitrain, and we'll talk. And we will decide if you are worthy of entering the greatest realm known to man, where some of the greatest conversations of our time actually are happening, if I do say so myself. But yeah. So I guess to get into the topic for today, did the state cause modernity? And again, by that we mean, the modern social issues. And I guess, if you are somebody of the more traditionalist, or I suppose, if you're more on the conservative side, just depending on how you would define that, you would say societal ills. If you are somebody that is more progressive, you likely would more so say, what do you mean societal ills, or what do you mean social issues? Like, this is social progress. So yeah. But I guess to get into it first, Ancat, I think you actually are a good person to be asking this question, because before we can even get into how the state affected all of this, we kind of have to address what is culture, and then we can address how the state has affected it. If once we have identified what it is. So I actually would like to ask you first, what is culture?
Well, it is funny. Like, I actually, as you were leading into that, I was expecting to sort of ask you a question, because I wanted to know, like, um, like what you would define as sort of the problems within culture, because I mean culture generally is this is you could maybe colloquially call it the sum of norms and behaviors that exist in social interactions between humans, I guess would be maybe a broader way of putting it. You can maybe attribute it to things like language or social dynamics between men and women, maybe between races as well. Social dynamics in the workplace, social dynamics in the family. So, I mean, there are a lot of different ways that you could take culture. I don't really using culture because I feel like it's sort of like I don't know, a lot of like alt writers use it sort of as a dog whistle for either race, or they sort of focus on it too much as though it's like like Mo Westfallen sort of thing, kind of like the
Well, did
cover
you
of the
not see
video.
the thumbnail? Billions must
Yeah,
die.
bro, the West is literally falling right now. Billions need to die.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing with this is like if you compare sort of, where I suppose like what has become sort of the norm more so, where we would be from, which is, in the United States, which is, like you can identify Western countries as sort of like these, like more, well, I don't necessarily know that I'd say like, they're inherently more liberal, but like, at least in the way that you would look at the people within them, you would see more social progressive values at least be more predominant. And I would say that has to do with the way the state is planning economies. And I mean, I would say that at least influences it, at least sets the stage for some of those ideas to become more prevalent as opposed to others. Though I mean, I guess my point here is that at least in the one that the societal ill, as you would put it, or I guess the social issue, that we would, to be a little bit more unbiased with the terminology, that I'm sort of framing at least the main topic that we have here around had to do with intersexual dynamics between men and women, and sort of the problem that at least to point out the problem first, I guess more so. I don't know if I want to necessarily say the problem or the effects, but I guess like what has been identifiable to people is that, well, it seems like marriage is more so in shambles, not necessarily that like, you can't get married successfully at all, but at least that divorce rates are a lot higher than you would think they optimally would be if people were selecting somebody that they believe this is the person they're going to be with for the rest of their life. And, you have a lot more of an increase in the propensity of women to engage in sexual content. Like if you see like, you can literally scroll through Instagram and there's not even dozens, hundreds, probably thousands. There's more than hundreds, thousands. I don't know how many thousands. I don't know if it's tens of thousands. I don't know how many. I don't know the number, but it just seems so more frequent, or so much more frequent, that you would see like these OnlyFans quote unquote models, like women basically posting themselves naked online for money. And so independent of I guess we'll get into that, but independent of whether this is like a result of some sort of economic pressure or some sort of ideological sort of shift, the problem actually is present. And so I mean, I guess it would depend on whether you would identify this as a problem. I would, just because I mean, like if you were to go further into the effects of this, you would see like the sort of, and I point to the intersexual dynamics, just because there has been a growing sentiment where, it's good to be a quote unquote independent woman, where, I don't need no man and basically be self-sufficient. But that just means more so like working behind a desk, not really like postponing the creation of a family, and basically sleeping around. It's pretty encouraged. So I'm just, I'm not saying this is inherent to every single woman that chooses to have a career over a family, but I mean, I think overwhelmingly that is, what we're hearing more and more of, simply because, well, I mean, if I were to say simply because, I don't necessarily know that it's so simple, but I'm just saying like, it's a sort of the way the women are acting are a result of whatever is causing it. And so like, if we were to identify the root cause, we would get to that sort of answer of the because, but more so, I guess you could just say that these things are stemming from a greater social issue, which is caused by yet another thing.
Yeah, and actually to tie it back to sort of economic conditions, I could point out quite a few of the major economic conditions that are causing um, I think a lot of girls to go on OnlyFans, and I think that's just because the cost of living is skyrocketing, the cost of food is skyrocketing, the cost of really everything is skyrocketing, and so people can't even if they're working full time, they can't even really afford rent a lot of the time, or a lot of times it's difficult to even save up money to buy a house, or get an affordable car, or pay off debt, or pay off, medical bills or things like that. So everything really is just getting so much more pricey. We can point to the states, creation of the business cycle. We can point to just inflation in general causing this issue. So I mean, I think there's a lot of underlying cause behind that where I think a lot of women, because like first of all, I think the reason why I think men and women also are getting jobs as well, like you're not really having this situation where the man can work full time and the woman can be at home, or the woman can raise a kid, or the woman doesn't have to have a job, or maybe even have a part-time job, or like do some kind of like side hobby. I think that part of it is because, again, of the economic conditions that are currently in place, preventing people from actually being able to afford living. So it's like now the man and the woman both have to go out and get a full-time job, and then even then they're still having trouble paying for housing and whatnot. And so I think a lot of that is causing really big dynamics, because we're seeing this sort of for the first time within gender roles where women are also being sort of the bread makers alongside men, or the breadwinners. Um, and so I think that could also
Well,
be
you're not really a
causing.
breadwinner if you're both the breadwinner, are you?
Sure, right. Well, no, I mean, you can both technically be winners in a sense. Like you're both bringing home income. I mean, if
But
you're making, you
the
could be making a profit.
breadwinner is sort of like a term to say like this person is the person that's making the money. Like you are not the money maker, you are one of two money makers. So I mean, I suppose like breadwinner, if anything, has sort of that I guess connotation, at least, that this
Hmm.
is the person that supply or provides for the family.
Hmm.
At least in as you would say colloquial sense.
Yeah, and I mean, and then there are also situations where the woman's working full time and the man is staying at home, or the man is doing something else, or is like a deadbeat or something.
Yeah.
And you could
Well, what
also
would
get
you
into
say?
like,
Well, I mean, like, what would you say that's a result of?
oh, like men abandoning their kids.
No, well, you said like men staying home and women working. Like, what would you say that's a result of? Like, because if
Um,
the societal like, or if, at least the economic pressures have caused it to be so that like basically both people are having to work, and generally that's why you're seeing more women in the workforce, and that's why you're not seeing as many like men that are able to provide for the women, and so that's why you're not seeing like sort of like the man's the one making the money and then the woman's the one staying at home. Why would you see the opposite? What would that be a product of? Like, would that be a result of some sort of economic change, or would that just be like more of a sort of like, I mean, I don't necessarily know that it would be like an isolated ideological shift, but I'm just like, my thought here is that that would have to be more so. I mean, at least not be, but it at least to me seems more so like some sort of shift in the idea that the man doesn't necessarily, or the man necessarily should, or the man shouldn't necessarily be the one bringing the money in.
yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is just that ideological shift where I think um a lot of people sort of treat working as though it's this like end all be all, this thing that like actually adds value to your life, when in reality I think what people don't realize on, I think, either side of the debate, whether it be the women should be staying at home barefoot and pregnant, white picket fence, or the people who are like really pushing women to be in the workforce. I think i think the problem is that we used to sort of face the pressure on women to be mothers, and then we also are now facing sort of the reverse in that, where motherhood is sort of discouraged or looked down upon, or at the very least like looked down upon to like a career, for instance, in some instances, in some communities and circles, to where I think people are forgetting that what women should value should just be what they actually want to do, independent of pressures from media or pressures from, you know, I guess, societal outlook as far as what they want. I think if women generally were allowed to sort of, not have pressure from either side, I think they'd be a lot more inclined to actually choose the position that they'd actually want to be in. If they want to be a mom, go ahead. I think more women would choose to be mothers in general, but again, like if a woman wanted to actually be a career woman and pursue a job, they could do that. It's not just pursuing it for the sake of independence or the sake of ma womanhood or ma independence. It's you're valuing it because you actually enjoy what you're doing, and you think it's going to improve the state of the world, not because you're trying to do it to like own the man, or like be independent, quote unquote.
Yeah, and I mean, definitely the state has created conditions in which it's really not as feasible as we would like it to be, or that it is even like I mean, ethically it should be to be able to be. I mean, strive towards fulfillment, like
Hmm.
basically do the thing that's going to make you happy. Now I mean, like rationally speaking, there are reasons I would say, like even so, I would say there probably is a reason beyond just well, beyond some sort of like biological inclination, I suppose, like to have children. That would probably mean like, women are happier like being mothers. But that is not to say that, because a lot of people want it to be like, oh, well, if you have this position, obviously you want to codify it in law. And, that is just, that goes against our understanding of the state. That goes against our understanding of how it operates and what its organizational interests are. So obviously it's like, we're just talking from the, or at least I'm just talking from the perspective. I know you are as well when it comes to the state, but I'm just saying on this issue specifically, I'm just talking from the issue, or I'm just talking from the perspective specifically that like, I don't think that, like every choice is equally as valid when it comes to, like sort of what is in your self-interest.
Hmm. And so, like, why exactly do you think this is? Like, could you give me an example? Like,
Yeah. So
yeah.
well, I would say like at least where it's stemming from initially, I would say is like sort of like not in the brain, but it is biological in the sense that men and women do have different biologies when it comes to hormones, when it comes to body
Hmm.
structure, when it comes to and because of the hormones, like ability to deal with stress or like propensity to sort of feel some sort of care and be essentially more like somebody that is more like caring or nurturing, I should say. Like for example, like women who have healthy amounts of progesterone are actually more inclined to be more nurturing towards those they care about. So if anything, if you're having somebody staying at home with the children who, and assuming you want to create a family, which we can get into that, but I'm just saying, like, assuming you already want to have the children, uh the person who is more nurturing would likely be able to take better care of the kids day to day, like at the home, while the other person who because of the hormonal makeup is actually more able to deal with stress, which would be the man, would be more capable of taking on that load of the work outside of the home. And basically it would just make more sense at that point for them to take those specific roles like overwhelmingly. So and honestly, like when it comes to like these hormones, like if you want to say like, oh well, maybe not every man or woman is equally capable of these things in the same manner, I mean, I think that would again be an issue of hormones. Now if you want to like look at the like soy boys or like this is what lesbians will call themselves, so I'm not using an offensive term here, but butches, these are people that obviously don't have their hormones in order, and it's not really an issue of the brain. It's not something that I guess there is some sort of psychological impact from some sort of philosophical ideas or values or whatever, but more so what you're seeing in their mannerisms, what you're seeing in their like the way they're acting, and so on and so forth. Not to say like every single action they take, but just sort of like how you see them present themselves and so on has a lot to do with the hormonal makeup and how healthy those are. So
Hmm.
I would just say like, optimally speaking, it makes more sense for these sort of traditional traditional roles of each sex to be present, or to be the ones that people who are hormonally healthy would strive for. And if anything, if you value your well-being, I would say you should strive for the healthy hormones.
Right, but I would agree with you that I think that's why these dynamics have played out historically and traditionally. But would you argue that like if for instance men and like a man and a woman who were a couple had different personality traits and interests, for instance, like um let's say the woman like wanted to be a doctor if she was like really interested in the medical field,
Ben
and so she
Shapiro's
didn't.
wife.
Yeah, right, exactly. Let's just say Ben Shapiro. Well, maybe not like Ben Shapiro exactly, because I think their
No.
relationship's probably fucked. But like let's take, yeah, let's just take a doctor. My wife is a doctor. Anyway, and then let's say there's maybe a man who's more into like daycare, like maybe wants to be a teacher, um, and so kind of has more like nurturing parental characteristics. Would you say that that's still a problem for that dynamic to take place freely and them choosing it based off of their interests, values, and personality traits?
Well, I never really said anything about the idea that, well, I guess if you're asking like, should it be a problem freely? Are you saying that like already assuming that, you know, conditions are free, that I'm saying that, you know, rationally these people probably shouldn't be doing that? Is that all you're asking there?
Well, I'm just saying that, yeah, like rationally speaking, do you think that like just because it's, you know, against their hormones, or it's not like it's different from what we typically expect through the sex dynamics between men and women because of that norm emerging, would you say that's like inherently a problem, or
Yeah,
like to
I
what
would be,
degree is it a problem?
because not just because of the well, it's not just because of like, I guess exactly what they're suited for, though I would still say like that is part of it. But you know, beyond that sort of, you know, when it comes to what these hormones are producing, they're producing masculine and feminine traits. So I would say, you know, first of all, like what you're seeing is you would be seeing a more feminine guy and a more masculine woman. Now, if you want to ask what the problem with that is, well, I generally speaking, and I don't, you know, I guess we would have to get a little bit more into whether this is a product of women wanting this because, you know, like I guess, you know, this is a social thing, or if there's actually something a little bit more beyond that. But essentially, at least in, you know, general terms or today's conditions, or like, you know, what, or I guess up till now, you know, what you would be able to observe is that generally speaking, this would not be a relationship in which the woman is respecting the man, you know, like essentially like generally that only happens because like women are typically looking for men that like make more money than them. They're typically looking for men that can provide. They're typically looking for men that like are taller than them or more intelligent than them, like a lot of different factors. But like they always are looking up or looking for a man that they can look up to. And that doesn't mean that they're looking for a man that disrespects them, but it's to say that they're looking for sort of a leader, you know what I'm saying? Like, and that is to say that somebody that can employ information in a manner that is going to lead toward good results for both people within the relationship as well as any other, like, you know, people, like assuming you have children or, you know, potential people in the relationship like children, or I guess, you know, in the family, as you could say. But basically speaking, like, you know, whatever this is a product of, at least we could see that, you know, I don't assume that the woman is necessarily going to find that respect if she's the one making all the money and the guy's just at home with the kids.
Yeah, I would agree with you to some extent, because I think a lot of the times the only thing that we can hear from the female perspective, and this is the same with men too, like what men will say, is that we really only hear a lot of the times what they say on the surface, because I think they would not want to say like, oh, like I'm a doctor and I don't respect my husband because he's home with the kids. I feel like that would be like a very taboo thing socially to say. So I think that like like if you were to if you were like, I feel like that's kind of like the problem, is that you couldn't really answer this question through pulling data, because I don't think you would get very like honest answers. And even if you did get like genuinely honest answers where it's like the woman like really feels like, no, I actually do still respect him like a lot. I haven't lost like an inch of respect for him because he's, you know, staying home with the kids and I'm the one making all the money and working late hours and things like that. I think that you would probably see a lot of like deep down, maybe not resentment, but like deep down feelings in that direction that they might not even know on the surface, you know,
Yeah,
or
sort
even
of
be
like a
willing to like
buildup of
admit
the
to
feeling that
themselves.
they're
Yeah.
sort of a buildup of the feeling that, you know, maybe this man isn't all that he's chalked up to
Mhm.
be, or maybe he's like a little weaker than I anticipated. You know,
Yeah.
I don't necessarily, and, you know, also like, you know, physically speaking, like, you know, as to who is more capable of being a protector. I mean, independent of like, I guess you could like say, okay, well, you know, we have weaponry now, we have like more advanced weaponry, we could say, but I mean, at least from like a biological perspective of like who makes sense to be a protector, I mean, it's the person who is more physically able, or I guess, you know, not able, but like in the sense, like, you know, able to deal with conflict that gets violent. And essentially you really only have one choice when it comes to between a man and a woman, unless, you know, the woman's Ronda Rousey and the guy's like, you know, some kid in his room that, you know, beats it all day and has no muscle, you know, that stereotypical one, you know, but, yeah, but essentially like, like in
Well, no,
general terms,
they gain muscle, but only in one arm, so it's like that Quagmire thing of where he has the
yeah,
big arm.
well, the point being is that generally speaking, the man's going to be the one that can take someone in a fight. It's
Mhm.
going to be a lot more difficult for a woman, especially if the assailer is a man, another man. You know, so I mean, in these terms, at least, you know, this has to do with the ability to. I mean, that is part of the provision. That is protection. You know, that is within that.
Mm.
And so, I mean, you know, these sort of traits kind of, I guess the traits that men and women are looking for kind of fall under these, like if it's a man, it falls under that provision. And if it's a woman, it falls more under the supportiveness and, you know, well, I mean, I guess that is kind of the broad term you could put it under.
Yeah, and I think even in situations where if you take like even if you take like modern weaponry into account, if you take but let's say you have two gun owners, a man and a woman, they both live together, they're husband and wife. I think in most cases the woman, even if she feels powerful enough to like where she could, she could shoot a guy, or she could be in that situation where she could defend herself with a firearm. I think in 99% of cases, I think she would still prefer the guy to do it for her, because that shows that he's like a protector, and that shows that he actually is confident and that could defend himself even without that kind of weapon. He's the type of person that would be willing to actually do that for her, and she wouldn't have to put herself in that vulnerable position. So like even I think even when men and women have like equal, protective equipment, you could say, I feel like just because of that biological nature, and just the physiology of the body, I think that that's generally why women feel this way and men don't.
Yeah. So getting back to the chat, we had JC Armitage say, number of OnlySims content creators going up not long after the cost of living start going up isn't as coincidental as you think. So this was in agreement with your point. So yeah, I mean,
Right.
I would also, say that there is truth to this. And I mean, part of it, I don't know, because like, would you say that sort of the idea that this is acceptable is a result of the sort of like economic side of it? Like that, essentially these conditions have created a point to where people feel the need to justify why this isn't something that is, I guess, like, not necessarily like, I guess, wrong in a sense of, I guess the better phrase to put it would be like maybe depraved, or like, like because prior to that, people would have seen it as that. Now it's being seen less so as that. And it seems that the justification is the money.
I think that's no, I honestly do think that we've had the conditions piling up for this type of thing to emerge recently, especially like after in the 2020s, sort of the OnlyFans culture. I think we've had that prior to, because again, you had pornography, you had like internet dating, you had a bunch of other, you had like like horny Twitch content creators, so you sort of had like the underlying roots of this boiling up to the point where now it's like a lot of people sort of see it as fine. But I think a lot of people also don't see it as fine. I think they just but you are right that it has sort of become more normalized. So I think that I don't think it's become, I don't think in our society it's become like at least morally accepted because of the economic conditions. I don't think people are looking at like, I don't think most people are saying OnlyFans is fine because of rent. I think people are saying that OnlyFans is fine because, it's a strong, independent woman. Like, there's nothing wrong with showing off your body like that.
Mhm.
Like, it's perfectly fine and healthy for that type of, content to
So
be
do
released.
you
Like, there's nothing
think,
there's nothing degrading about it. They like it,
mhm.
etc.
So do you think that without these sorts of justifications prior about like, the sort of feminist takes on this, that, this would be, and, it depends on which wave of feminism I suppose you're talking about, but, that this would be a strong, independent woman, and, she's supporting for herself, she's independent and all that, had there not been this sort of feminist justification prior, do you think that that would have affected the way in which, people aim, or especially women aim to make money because of the economic conditions currently?
Yeah, definitely. I think that they probably, a lot of them, if they felt that they were doing something wrong by doing it, it's sort of like if we've normalized drug use, right? You know, if we sort of normalize drug use, even in economic hardships, if they're probably more likely to be like, oh, well, I can make my money, selling drugs and stuff. Whereas if we've sort of ruled that out as a taboo, even if that might be very tempting, that might like the moral taboo might be like a barrier to be like, well, actually, I know that like what I'm doing is wrong, so I probably shouldn't be doing this,
Mhm.
even though I know it's like an easy way out and I don't feel comfortable with doing this. So I think that, yeah, like it's sort of like two coinciding pressures, sort of the moral acceptability of it, and less judgment in that area, and more, and also like actually I would say that goes in hand with, yeah, actually, I think the OnlyFans content has been um, spreading popular because of three reasons. I think one of them is the economic conditions. I think the other reason is sort of the moral acceptability. But I think the third reason is also just the high demand for it, because I think you've
Mm.
seen a lot of high demand among men. I don't think this is exclusively like a women thing that like women should be blamed for. I think that this type of content, there's a reason why it makes so much money. It's like the only reason why it makes this amount of money is because there are a lot of low T men who are like demanding this kind of content, and sort of lonely and want that companionship, or they want something out of it. And you could probably go into detail about what that is, but I think there are a lot of different causes for like why OnlyFans and stuff has
it
become
gets
popular.
it gets hard to pin the blame specifically for the origin of the problems, not necessarily the people themselves that are doing these things, because you can blame that on the person themselves. But I'm just saying sort of like what has sparked a lot of this. And so, yeah, it's not exclusively like, overall, if we're looking at this as a whole, yeah, it's not like as if like women just woke up one day, did it, and then that's what started all this. Well, yeah, there was a demand for it, as well as, I guess, and yes, the conditions that sort of like set this forth as sort of something to be acceptable. Yeah, I don't know. I was wondering also, like, kind of, when it comes to this idea of, what becomes more acceptable under certain economic conditions. You mentioned drug use or drug selling as one of the examples. But what if, like, there are severe economic conditions and sort of like, let's say society, or at least, individuals within it prior, overwhelmingly accept something like, like aggression is wrong, right? Or like we don't want to engage in aggression, at least. And so let's say like there is a period of like siege, and like, there is like war going on, like, but like it's like within the streets. Do you think people would start saying continually, like, or I guess, do you think people would continue to say, I should say, no, aggression is wrong, I won't do anything aggressive to fend for myself or my family? Or do you think they would actually, like, sort of abandon a principle because of the condition that they find themselves within?
I think a lot of people would just abandon principle. I think that I think it would depend on like like how bad the conditions are, and
Right.
what sort of the general climate is, because you could have people that maybe say they value freedom and they value X, Y, and Z, but again, there's a big difference between saying what you want and then actually going out and doing it. So I guess that's like the only thing that I would say there, is that I think it would just you would have to like really examine a lot of the details of the situation, and not just say, well, we'll blanket, what would you say about this, if that makes sense.
Right. And so I'm trying to check on the Instagram to see what we got going on here with the show, because I did put the stream key in there.
Very
Just trying to
good.
see if we got it good.
I could mention that the thing that I wanted to bring up about marriage, which is sort of
Okay.
the traditional like libertarian criticism of marriage, um, and it's essentially the notion that marriage contracts aren't legitimate because um, they're essentially they have nothing to do with a actual free agreement between people. It's more just it's really just a contract that you've created that's only existing because the state has artificially inserted itself into love relationships between people. And what that does is it bases that contract around property relations, around child custody, things like that. And it's also based it around like tax, like tax brackets and things like that. So um and the general problem with this is that because what we would normally call a relationship, or a quote unquote marriage between the two people, like, hey, I want to commit to you forever, because that's been co-opted by the state in what we call marriage. It's become a legal thing. So what it essentially does is it ties relationships that are supposed to organically form around love, connection, and trust for both parties. Now that relationship has been co-opted, and the lens through which you see your partner is always going to be underlying. There's always going to be an underlying tie to who gets what in the property. How can I sort of rub up to the state, in the case of a lot of women who try to get custody, where they sort of play the victim and say, "Oh, I'm gonna plea for the state, and then the state's gonna come down on my side," and then the man's totally fucked. Or you see reverse situations, obviously. Um, but that's sort of the problem with a lot of marriage now, is that it's essentially become based around property relations instead of genuine connection. And you can very much see why that becomes a problem, because I don't think that's one of the main reasons for why divorce rates are increasing, because I think divorce rates have been increasing. I think divorce, like, you've still had these same marriage property titles, even going back to the 50s or the 1900s or 1800s. and you haven't seen these divorce rates. I think divorce rates are an entirely separate thing, but I think that even getting aside divorce rates, I think the reason why a lot of relationships, even if you're together, a lot of them are unhealthy, is because of that underlying problem with property and how the state wields it. And so this was
Mhm.
actually a critique that this critique was actually originally made by Proudhon, the first libertarian philosopher. But interestingly enough, most people attribute it to Marx and Engels, because they don't really. A lot of other socialist thinkers at the time who were actually genuinely libertarians don't get a lot of credit because I think it's very obvious why, Marx and Engels are propped up and so popular as opposed to and get credit for a lot of the things that Proudhon
Yeah.
originally came up with. And that's because, Marx was a statist and he was a totalitarian, he was an authoritarian. So he was very beneficial for the political class, whereas Proudhon definitely was not, at least to a certain extent.
Yeah. Real quick, I'm gonna get to some chats and then we can continue on this conversation.
Yeah.
Let's see. Zach, what's up, Milkman? You know what? Cheers, Zach.
Milky.
I had to drink a little milk right there. I have milk with maple syrup in it. It's actually A2 milk, so it's very nice. It's very easy on digestion. I would recommend it. And by the way, that comes from cows with a certain protein that most cows nowadays don't have because of a genetic mutation where they have A1 and A2, and it actually makes it harder to digest the milk. So, if anything, I have the original cows in my possession. I mean, at least they're milk. Let's see. So I hope that doesn't get clipped. I actually hope it does. It would be funny. But let's see. Oddities and Rarity says evolutionary psychology. So, I mean, is that having to do with the actual statement of men and women? I don't think, the hormones that I don't know exactly what you're referring to, but I don't think the hormones themselves are something that have evolved over time, after men and women already had them, you know what I'm saying? So I don't know, at this point, I think they've been pretty consistent and now they've just been changing because of environmental reasons and diet and all that. And I don't I wouldn't say men and women have any sort of mental, I guess difference in the brain, I should say. It's not mental, a difference in the brain, the actual necessarily how it works, their ability to sort of, I guess, the ability to reason is maybe a little bit affected by the hormones, but it's not really they lack the ability to have logical thought and come to the
Right.
same conclusions on logic.
Well, I mean, I'm kidding.
Well, no, but seriously, they don't actually lack the ability to reach the same conclusions on logic. Though hormones can guide or cloud judgment, I should say. Sorry, but that doesn't mean they're incapable of it, and nor does it mean that it really is something that over time has become the case because of some sort of coevolution between men and women. I wouldn't say. Let's see, but he says socialist women justify their choice of partners as if their preferences are just their individual taste, right? While a wider analysis of their behavior is generally in step with what you'd expect.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's true. Just because they're socialists, generally, I don't think that their relationship's gonna, go very well. If they're
Yeah.
socialist partners or whatever, but I mean, maybe it will.
Egalitarian relationship.
Yeah. I was gonna say though, you bringing up that milk thing, you know what they say when you're at the club, you got to go through the cows to get to the milk.
That I don't know if that adds up. I don't know if that adds up as an analogy.
Yeah,
But
it
Zach
does.
loves milk too, so great. Yeah, honestly, if we were to
Milk is good.
dissect
I
that for
love
a
milk.
second, I feel like we have to back up on this. If we were to dissect that for a second, you have to go through the cows to get the milk. So you mean you have to go through the fat chicks to get the beautiful chicks is what we get here.
Right.
Now, the problem is, how are you going to go through the cows to get the milk? You usually squeeze the milk out of the cows. Are you saying the beautiful women are contained within the fat women as if there were two of them in one fat suit or something? I don't know. Or do you have to juice the fat women? I don't know. That's a little
No,
sus.
I'm not saying in a literal sense that they're the cow. I'm just saying that in the same sense that you would have to go through the medium of a cow in order to get milk like a farmer, you have to do the same thing at the club.
Let's just go with the classic. You have to go through the fridge to get the snack.
Yeah, that's the better one, honestly.
Yeah.
But that was the first thing I came up with when you were mentioning, milk. So
Let's see. If it's not DoorDash for pennies, it's only simping for attention. That's Zach.
I mean, yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I think it could be, but I think a lot of women doing OnlyFans aren't very happy with themselves. I know it's hard to say. It's like I haven't really seen any like studies on this, but I guess if I had to guess, I think that there would be a lot of women who think that they're like mentally okay doing this, but maybe deep down they have some problems, or they just have a lot of, I think mostly it's just daddy issues, honestly.
Zach, fat
Fat
chicks have
chicks
to
have to
pay.
pay. Yeah, fat
Uh,
chicks at the club. If you're rizzing up a fat
yeah.
chick at the club, she's basically the man in the situation. Make her pay.
Okay, I'm going to skip to a newer chatter that we have in here, obviously, because Ignis is here. He's saying peak masculinity, and for the first time, his chat doesn't start with figs. Anyway, but peak masculinity and femininity is being an ideal father and mother, respectively. I mean, okay, so, but does that mean one must first be like? I guess you're saying you have to become one who can be an ideal father in order to be masculine. Is that what you're saying? Not necessarily that you have to be a father, otherwise you couldn't be masculine, but also, is it necessary to want children to be a masculine or feminine person would actually be my question, because I don't necessarily know that that's the case. Maybe femininity, possibly, but masculinity, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know. I am tempted to agree with that, but I don't really know that they're like, that's like the only type of masculine trait that you can have. You could
Well,
be like, you could be very masculine because you
he
you
is
could
saying
be
peak
very masculine to
masculinity.
your.
He is saying peak masculinity, to be fair. So he's not saying it's as if masculinity is only being an ideal father necessarily, but it kind of seems like if that's what the peak is, well then, what else is there to it below that?
Yeah, I mean, I could say that like on the level of I feel like on the same level isn't just raising kids being a dad. I feel like you could have an equal level of like um like showing off your masculinity when you're with a partner that you care for, whether that be a wife or a girlfriend. I feel like that is probably one of the more peak masculine things that you can do. Um, and there's
You
also
know,
like,
I mean, like,
I think there's also like the career aspect as well, like making income for yourself, or at least at the very least finding a passion and providing something of value to the world, and not like sitting in your room playing video games all day, or being sort of a loser. Like, I think a lot
mhm.
of masculinity has to do with actually making a career for yourself, making a name for yourself, going out in the world and making a positive development on it, and leading the way, to pave a better future. I think that could also be on the line on that same level. Like, I guess I would disagree only in the sense that I don't think you have to be like, in order for you to be the peak of masculinity, to have kids, because I think just some people don't value kids or having children, and that's not because it's like too difficult, or it's like too scary for them. Like, obviously, like, we as libertarians would never join the military. That's not because we're like pussies and like, oh, we're too scared to like, oh, you're too scared to like pick up a gun and fight and storm Normandy or whatever. Like, no, that's just against our interests and values. So
I
in the
don't have
same
much of an
way.
interest in killing innocent people most of the time.
Right, yeah, exactly. So like, and I'm not like putting that on the same level. I'm just using that as an example that some people may have a lot of time on their hands to where they want to maybe focus on their career, or they want to focus on other interests and passions and hobbies, still be very masculine, even have a partner or a wife or whatever, but maybe you're just not really interested in raising kids. So I think you can be a peak masculine person, um, and not have kids if that's your choice. But you know
Okay, so let's see. Let me try and get to some more. Let me try and get to these comments more quickly. Let's see. So we have well, we don't necessarily have to rush it, but I'm just saying, like, for
yeah,
the
yeah,
sake of organization in this episode, let's see what we can do here. But Ignis says that is a virtue to aspire to. Hedonism is no replacement, but is the alternative only hedonism if you do not want children? Like, is that what
yeah.
the
How
point is
is
here?
how is not like, you like, you like, if you were to say like, oh, I don't want kids because I want to like play video games all day, and that like, having a kid is like cutting into that time, I think I would agree with you, but maybe
Here's
you
his
don't want.
position.
Huh?
Here's his position on
Okay,
it. He
I
says the
see.
purpose of work is to sacrifice in the present for the future. The ultimate purpose to sacrifice the present for is family. The alternatives are always lesser. Well, I mean, you'd need to prove that. You need to say that, like, you need to provide justification for why that's the case. Not that it's necessarily wrong, but that like that, you can't just claim it to be the case is the thing.
Well, I mean, like, what if you have like a lot of scholarly work that you want to do, and actually, yeah, come to think of it, I know Rothbard was married, but did he have any kids?
I don't think so.
I don't think he did. Yeah, like he didn't have any kids. I mean, and I mean maybe I am wrong, but but I know that like a lot of intellectuals, a lot of them just they won't have kids, but they will have a partner just because like their work is so time consuming and and again, like this is a fringe case, but I'm just using that like as just one example that might counteract your case here is that you're still you're still sacrificing a lot in the present for value that you gain in the future to make people's lives better. But you're just not doing it in the realm of having kids. So again, like I think people have a lot of different interests and values, and I don't think that just because you don't want to have a kid doesn't mean that like you're saying that, oh, I don't want to have a kid because it's too difficult, or I don't want to have a kid because I just want to like eat Cheetos and play video games and stuff like that.
Yeah. So let's
I
see
think people
here.
just I think some people just don't like kids or they don't again they just don't have a value in having kids.
We have oddities and rarities. On the other hand, I think women's attraction to men is far more sociological than men's attraction to women. I would say that makes sense, just in the sense that men's attraction to women stems a lot more from the physical attraction, and women's stems a lot more from the man's like abilities and his personality and his like who he is, not necessarily just the looks.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so is it more sociological? I would say yes. Not that like one it completely is and the other isn't.
Yeah, and another thing that I wanted to point out with the marriage thing too is that like it may contribute. You could say that it contributes more to what we might call society to have a child, right? Um, but I think like there are lots of things that we could be doing that would probably contribute a lot more to the functioning society. Um, in that we might have to sacrifice our own values for that we wouldn't do. So for instance, you may hate the idea, just hate the idea of becoming a doctor. Like you don't like you feel like you'd be miserable, you feel like you would waste a lot of money, a lot of time. You just again you just have a lot of disdain for the profession, not because necessarily it's too difficult, but that could also be a factor. Even though you becoming a doctor may have a role in saving a lot more people, and providing quote unquote value into society, but you might not want to do that because you know that you would sacrifice a lot into of your own personal mental well-being. You only really have one life. Maybe I want to pursue the interest that I'm interested in and not give up something for the greater good necessarily. So we do that all the time in a lot of things like professions. Like we could fuck off and like me and you right now, we could abandon our lives here in the US and become um, devote our entire lives to being a charity, um, like being a charity ministers in Africa, right?
I don't
But
think I'll do that.
right, but like we don't really in our own lives we maybe want to pursue other careers and interests because we have a lot of different interests and passions. So I don't really see how the same thing couldn't be said for not wanting to have kids. Maybe you just don't maybe just the idea of becoming a father is as unappealing to you as becoming like a doctor or becoming a lawyer.
Yeah. So, I mean, the thing is like this whole idea, and this actually ties it in a little bit more to what we sort of were trying to address from the beginning here. This whole idea that essentially you are meant to contribute to society. And that is sort of like, that ought to be your aim or something. I feel like that's a very, very much a position. I mean, like of not only, like, let's say like religion or something, but like the state. I mean, like, and those two are, I believe, are intertwined. But, I would say here that, basically people are essentially told like, yeah, your purpose is, I mean, essentially without saying it, but, economic, and that, you basically are just here to be, and if you just follow it all the way to the end, it's like your purpose is actually to be a worker drone and like just uphold like, this tax cattle society for us. But, basically, they'll try to wrap that up a little bit by saying like, well, you have a duty to serve others, like basically like think of the greater good, think of the common, think of your fellow man, think of think of like the future after you're gone. And it's like, well, why should you think about that? You're I mean, you're here till you're gone. So why should you make sacrifices? Like, you would have to be the one to demonstrate that. I would have to make sacrifices that, for some reason it is in my own interest to make these sacrifices in order for me to even consider doing them, or to making them, I should say.
Yeah, I mean, and some people just may not care really what happens when they die, because after they're dead, they lose consciousness, so they really just want to experience life as it is. And I feel
Yeah.
like some people have different values in regards to that, because I feel like if you know, like if you died, you would still care if like even if you died, you would still not want, if you had friends and family alive, you wouldn't want them all to like suddenly get tragically die in a car accident or something like that after you, like the second after you died. So I think people still do
Well, I wouldn't
focus
want that right now,
primarily.
but I just have no idea of what happens after. So it's like there is no essence of me that is able to care afterward.
Right, but like I'm just saying, because you do care about that now, you would perform actions in your life now to prevent that from happening even after you died.
Well, as much as I can, sure.
Yeah. So like I think in this like does have a point there, but I'm just saying that um
But I
like
mean, that's
let's
more so, like, if anything, you're trying to preserve them, so that you can experience the time you have with them, and you want to prolong the time they have. I mean, because you care about, like, essentially their well-being matters to you because you care about these people. So, I mean, like, and because you care about them, obviously, because you've built some sort of emotional bond with them, they bring some sort of value to your life. And so you
well,
don't want to essentially be at the point where you're saying, I only value this person so little that I only care if they live, the same amount of years I do. You're saying, well, this person brings so much happiness to me that I have grown this, like, love or this care for this person. So I actually do want this person to have a fulfilling life as well. This person's consciousness continues to exist. And so, this person specifically, like, not just, a humanity as a whole, but like, the things that I've actually come to care about, I do want them to not, tragically die or something like that. Would never, if I were to know about it, it wouldn't make me happy, but it's not like I will know about it.
hmm yeah, I mean, but like I would say that just because you're not going to know when you die, you're going to be unconscious, you're not going to be able to think about that. While you're living in the moment, you still care in that moment about what happens after you're dead. I'm assuming you would agree with that.
I mean, like, I see an issue a little bit with the statement, just in the sense that, like, yes, there are things that I technically do care about that would happen after I die, but it's just more so like I care about the preservation of these things as a value, not necessarily that, like, I care about how, like, the world turns out or something like that. Like, I care exactly about how this thing goes, how that thing goes. And it's not to say that you shouldn't, or it's not to say that, like, it makes no sense at all to say, like, I hope one day humanity will be in a better state that it is now. But to say that, like, I should make sacrifices toward that end aren't necessarily making sense if it's like sacrificing my self-interest.
Right, I would agree with you there. I think Roderick Long has a very interesting thought experiment about this, where he talks about like, let's say, like, why do we buy life insurance? Do we buy life insurance because it gives us satisfaction in the moment, or because we genuinely do care about what happens after we die in the moment right now, even though when we die, we know we're going to be unconscious, so we're not going to be able to care then, but we do care about what happens after we die now. And so a lot of people would maybe argue that no, 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 we're just, the only reason we're buying life insurance is because we feel good in the moment, thinking that they would be actually cared for.
Right.
And his thought experiment is, okay, well, let's say you had two options. You could either buy life insurance for $50, or sorry, buy life insurance for $100, or for $50 buy a blue pill that makes you think that you bought life insurance for them, right? And so I think most people in that case, because they would take the actual life insurance, not the blue pill that makes them think that they bought life insurance, that I think would demonstrate that no, 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 you actually, like, it's not just because you don't just value the fact that you're feeling good now, thinking that they're going to be okay. Like, you actually want them to be okay in the
But I
future, if
would
that makes
but I
sense.
would feel bad now until I take the blue pill. So that would
Yeah, but
warrant
like,
me, that would sort of like cause me to not want to take the blue pill in the first place.
right, but I'm just saying, like, because people would not choose to take the blue pill, that they would actually take the pill, or they would actually take the actual life insurance itself, already demonstrates that because they already made that choice, that they value their loved ones actually doing well, not just the idea of their loved ones doing well.
I see what you're saying, though. I'm just pointing out that, like, the idea right now that I would be tricking myself, and the idea right now that I know that if I take that pill, then they won't actually get this, and my care for them will only be like, this fictional thing. Those things could sort of deter me from even wanting to take the pill to begin with, is the issue. Now, I see what you're saying. I get it, but I'm just saying, like, well, is it exactly that, is just kind of my question here. And so, it's not that I don't get it, and it's not that I would necessarily disagree. It's just, I just see a little bit of a flaw in that. Like, I don't necessarily think it aligns 100% with, like, you necessarily demonstrating that, like, okay, well, it is because I care about, it's not even saying I care about what happened. Well, I guess the argument is kind of like, I care about what happens after I'm unconscious. I don't know. Yeah, I guess we could kind of end it on that, honestly, but
Sure.
I hope you see what I'm saying with it.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Let's see. So let's get to some more chats here. Yeah, we got a lot here. I'm just gonna have to go through the ones that are relevant right now to the conversation, guys. Not to say you shouldn't chat or give some people laughs, but we just got to. I could get to them maybe later, but I do have to take a look at just some of the things that are relevant to the conversation. Let's see. So yeah, Ignis did say that. Yeah, he's like, yeah, fair in regards to proving it. I'm talking about ideas out, or I'm talking the ideas out to think of them. I work out the claim to prove first, then see if it can be supported. Okay. Well, I don't necessarily know that you should be going that way, but if you can prove it, then it's good to believe it. Then I mean, well, if you care about truth. So, let's see. So the problem is, if peak masculinity is being father, the moment you have a child, you become responsible for something that isn't a father. So you made something non-peak masculine. Well, how's that? Okay.
What? I'm confused what they're even saying.
I didn't really, let's see. Therefore, it can't be peak masculine to be, I don't
Wait, okay,
necessarily get that.
can you put up the chat again, the previous
Yeah,
one?
because he says,
Yeah, okay.
the problem is, if peak masculinity is being a father, the moment you have a child, you become responsible for something that isn't a father. But the purpose of being a father is to be responsible for something that isn't a father. So how does that make sense? I don't get that.
Yeah, he's saying that being the father and having the child is the masculine thing. So, like, the caring for the child is the
you have
masculine
to
thing.
put and having a child, like being a father implies you're having a child.
Yeah.
Or it implies you have a child if you already are a father. Now, if you strive to be a good father, then that means you want to show the qualities of somebody that can raise that child. I don't necessarily get that.
Right.
But yeah, he does say, by the way, it's good or best to look for evidence and draw conclusions from it rather than the other way around. I completely agree, because guess what? Let's say, like, okay, well, now I believe all religions are real, and I'm actually going to work backward to see which ones are wrong so I can sort out the right religion. I don't necessarily know that that's the best way of looking at it. It's not.
Right.
I know that it's not, but I say that sort of in jest. But yeah, let's see what we have here. So yeah, we kind of talked about, like, at least the state's role in sort of marriage, and how that causes issues. I mean, one other thing, like, you kind of hinted at this, but one thing you can point out is that, like, custody laws. I mean, I don't necessarily know how much you talked about custody compared to just like the actual split, but even like divorce in general is not favorable toward men. But then, especially in custody, like, overwhelmingly, men are given an uphill battle to face when it comes to the kids. So I would say that, I mean, like, that almost just, I mean, like, a lot of these problems are de-incentivizing marriage now, so I would say it's an issue of, like, not necessarily the case that, like, I guess I'm not advocating for people to get in marriage contracts under the state or anything, right? But what I'm saying is that, if anything, how the state is treating marriage as sort of like this contractual institution is actually deterring people from wanting, or at least men from wanting, to get married now. I would say it kind of, like, it seems favorable for women. So if anything, they seem to be okay with it. It's like you like 80% of women, I think it is, something like that, initiate divorce, and then they get half the stuff. So it's not necessarily like you have as much to lose if you're a woman getting, like, into a marriage. I think that's just an easy claim to make that we don't really need to argue much on, because it just is the case. We can see this to be the case, at least here in the West, especially. Like, I'm not saying that's worldwide, because obviously there are places that are less favorable toward women even getting divorced in the first place. So I mean, like, if there is such a thing as, like, an abusive marriage or something like that, I'm not saying everywhere in the world it's even easy for women to get out of that. So like, that isn't to say that either of these things are favorable outcomes. It seems that JC Armitage is trying to explain what Oddities and Rarities is saying. I think what ONR was trying to say was something along the lines of, can it be considered peak masculinity to create something that doesn't start with peak masculinity, assuming the child is male? that doesn't start with peak masculinity. Create something that doesn't start with peak masculinity. You are raising the child to be masculine. I still don't get it. Am I missing something? Are you getting this?
I'm kind of missing it, to be honest.
Like if the child is male, you're raising it to be masculine. If the child is female, you're not raising it to be masculine. What are they kind of hooking onto the idea that this is to mean that everything must be maximally masculine in your life aside from just yourself? Like, peak masculinity is like, oh, well, even the children I have, even if they're women, they must be masculine. Like, how does that make sense? That doesn't I don't think that follows from what Ignis was saying. So
when your wife has birth, they need when she shoots out the baby needs to already have a gym membership.
Look, I'm gonna work out before I have that kid. I'm gonna work out so much. I'm not gonna actually work out so much. High intensity training is good to do like a few times a week, but not like excessively, not every day, not even like.
Wait, like, but how would that? Wait, do you think that like you working out is like gonna improve the quality of the health of the kid?
There are a lot of things that influence gene expression. So I would say that there perhaps is a way that would influence the actual let's see. Instagram just like clocked out, even though I didn't see it live on Instagram.
You just get like better quality loads when you're working out.
It's possible. I don't know. That's, but like the thing is like, there are things that impact semen quality. So I would say that actually is, a preferable thing to increase. And honestly, like since, you can do workouts that increase testosterone, I would say that production of it actually is, preferable to have children with, even if you're not necessarily expressing some sort of gene that would have to do with muscle growth necessarily. At least you are creating the highest quality sperm you can. So I mean, there actually would be a point in trying to be optimally healthy when having children as opposed to being obese.
Okay, but like here's the question though, is that what counts as healthy sperm? Like optimal sperm, quote unquote. I mean, maybe not like healthy, obviously.
Sperm
like
that is produced when the
sperm is like red or something, then it's not healthy.
Sperm that is produced when the man is in optimal hormonal shape and he has like not an unhealthy amount of body fat, he's not insulin resistant, he's metabolically fine, like his system's working well, the sperm he's producing is quality because his gonads are in good shape.
No, but like what counts as being quality sperm? Like what is the quality?
What counts as being quality sperm?
What benefits does that particular sperm have over other sperm?
I would say the motility is one thing. So, I mean, if anything, it would enhance your ability to get a woman pregnant. I mean, I don't know. I think like, if there's some sort of like radiation affecting your sperm or something like that, that would definitely like impact the actual like genes that are being like put together there. So, I mean, if there is some sort of genetic damage that takes place, then that would not be good quality sperm.
Well, sure. But I'm just like saying like, what qualities of the sperm specifically is something that like working out or eating healthy going to do? Like, I'm not even disagreeing with you here. I'm just like wondering if you know.
Oh, well, I mean, what I'm saying here is that like I'm taking it that if you like, again, like, having to do with like lack of exposure to radiation would mean that the sperm itself is healthier. You know what I'm saying? So like it would be something that is not as damaged. Your child is less likely to have genetic deficiencies because of this. As far as like the motility, I do believe that there would be benefits, at least if you're like getting the right amount of nutrients and such, so that your sperm actually would be like more viable when it comes to impregnating somebody. I'm loosely referencing what I'm aware of when it comes to these these health benefits of these things, but what I'm saying is that like if your hormonal production is good, I mean, first of all, you're going to have good sperm count. So I mean, if anything, the working out is going to help with the sperm count itself. Just all these things I think come together in order to produce like if anything, maximize efficiency when it comes to actually getting pregnant and reduce the risk of sort of these problems in children that you would have potentially, like the offspring.
So wait, maximizing efficiency for you is you get less chances to raw dog it?
Well, you can keep doing it after you get her pregnant. I don't see why you can't like just keep doing it. Why do you what are we, Christian here or something?
Well, no, I'm just saying that like in like you're like trying to do it. You're trying to like have an excuse to like do it less.
Just don't have her pee on the stick. Don't have her pee on the stick. Just keep doing it and keep saying, well, by grace of God, you will, we'll see when you get pregnant. We'll know. You don't have to pee on no stick.
Okay.
Yeah, this conversation, LOL. Yeah, it is kind of funny, isn't it? Yeah, JC Armitage wasn't exactly sure. Oh, he was just joking, talking nonsense. Jeez, man.
How do you do like tests?
He was trolling us the whole time.
How do you do tests for testosterone? Like, do you have to like go to a
You
doctor visit
you get
about
work
that?
done.
Like,
Yeah,
what?
you go to the doctor, you get work done. Like, I mean, like
Like blood work?
lab results.
Like, do they test your blood for that?
Yeah,
Is that
they
how
can
they
test for your
test? Okay, I
testosterone.
see. Hmm.
I don't think they have you come in a cup.
Yeah.
I
Well,
don't
no,
think they
no.
do. I'm not certain that they do that.
I hope not.
Yeah, I think you can just get blood work done. I don't see why you couldn't just get blood work done for that.
Right. I mean, or piss in a cup. But I don't know if that would
Yeah.
actually.
Well, I don't know. I
I don't
don't
know
know that
if
would
that
work.
would actually. It would probably be blood, but I don't know how any of that works. But yeah.
You're saying you might be blood if you piss out in a cup?
No. I'm just saying that
I
like.
know what you're
I just
saying.
yeah.
I know what you're saying.
Have
Yeah.
you been tested? Are you have you had the confirmation of being high T?
I have not had testosterone testing specifically. I've had cholesterol testing. My cholesterol is good, and cholesterol actually influences your testosterone production. So I do have
Okay.
good cholesterol. Well, I mean, in the sense of like it's high, which is
You
good
sounded
because you
like
actually
Trump
want
there. Like I
you
do have
actually
good cholesterol. Okay, it's the
you
best.
actually
It's the
want the high
greatest.
HDL. You don't just want the high LDL. The doctors say it's bad when you have high cholesterol, but the truth being, if you have high HDL and high LDL, you're actually not insulin resistant, folks.
They say I have the best cholesterol. Okay.
That one was good. But yeah, no, I mean, I have had that. My TSH, which is a thyroid stimulating hormone, has decreased, which actually means that I have more production of thyroid hormone, which is good for metabolism, which means I'm in a healthy state, which would mean my hormone production is more likely to be at a good point. So I have better levels than before as far as my health markers, as far as I've seen on my blood work. So I would take it that my testosterone is actually getting better, if anything, not getting worse, which for a lot of
Holy
guys,
shit, he has high T.
for a lot of guys, that actually goes down over time. Now there are ways of preventing this. You can do you don't necessarily even need to do just like some sort of testosterone supplementation, which actually I don't even think that's the most advisable thing to be doing. You can do like either if you can find good source like a pregnenolone, or if you can do progesterone. I think it's mixed with a DHEA. I believe was the mix that Pete was saying that he was using instead of pregnenolone. But yeah, basically you can use these to balance the hormones, and there are other things you can do, like eat a meat, like a lot more like like good animal foods and like fruit. Just a lot of these healthy whole foods. It's going to help you as well with your hormone production. So you're not going to become a soy boy if you're not eating a bunch of PUFAs. Let's see. We got oddities and rarities in here saying, interestingly, repeated mating without pregnancy is actually designed to bring the mating partners into a closer emotional bond so that when they do become pregnant, they'll be there for the child. I don't know, because like what is like younger people have a far more successful rate of that. So, I mean, is that something that like, is that influencing that, or, what is going on here with that? If that's the case, he's saying it has an evolutionary advantage. In other words, I don't know how true that is. But if you can support it, then, I'm interested in looking at it more anyway. The thing is real quick, there's this thing I've been seeing about, like basically women retaining the DNA of men that they've slept with, like when they like, go inside of them, with no blockage. Right. And so I'm not necessarily saying it affects them, but at least, okay. So I've seen claims that this affects offspring, but from what I've seen, at least me personally, I've only seen this to be true with flies or like mosquitoes. It was like one of those. It was like one of those bugs where they actually looked at the females. They saw that the male sperm was still like of other like male mosquitoes or whatever it was. Well, let's say mosquitoes that were in them. We see like they're retaining that DNA. It's influencing their brains, and it's influencing the offspring. And so apparently there have been claims that this is true for like human women as well, though I have not looked enough into this to say this is true or not. But that would be really interesting if that's true.
So you're saying that if she slept with Tyrone and my baby ends up black, doesn't necessarily mean that the baby wasn't mine.
If that were the case, wouldn't it still technically be Tyrone's baby if it has his genetic code?
Well, but it could have mine as well. That's the thing.
I don't know how that would work.
It has a mix.
I don't know
yeah,
if
but
that's possible.
I thought that's what you were saying. Like,
Yeah, I
it
know.
has
I
like
know.
it would have like a mix of the past
Right.
partners plus your DNA that you impregnated the
Right. It
woman.
influences offspring. I just couldn't imagine like how, like, even for flies, like how does this work? Well, because like, you have some of the genetic code influencing the sperm and the egg that are already present. Like, cause usually those are the only two, cause you can only have one sperm go in an egg, right? So, and it's not as if the partner sperm, the old partner sperm is retained within there. It's just the genetic code. So what exactly is being laid onto this genetic code that's being created, or how is it exactly influencing how that's being structured to make it seem more like, or resemble more of a previous partner? I don't know. I need to look more into that, but very interesting stuff. So I guess Tyrone's that's not Tyrone's baby. That is your baby. Though, I'd be very
It's both of your
suspicious if I
babies.
had a,
You're both the baby daddies.
I'd be very suspicious. Yeah, got pregnant in a
Two
threesome. So
fathers.
who baby is it? As Kanye once said, not too long ago. But I'd be very interested to see, how this is even the case, or if you were saying
I
what?
was just gonna say, have you seen like "You Are Not the Father" compilations?
Yeah.
They kind of be acting rowdy with some of those,
It's like, can I Millie Rock?
Just start breakdancing.
Let's see. So
I think one of them was like was doing a backflip afterward.
if blood's coming out of you when you piss, from JC Armitage, unless you're a female on her period, you definitely need to see a doctor about that. Well, maybe you're excreting toxins. I don't know. Probably not. There is definitely an issue. And don't drink water. Like, you don't drink water and that's why you're peeing blood. Okay. Would you have the blood to necessarily pee out at that point? Let's see. It might be Tyrone's DNA, but at least when the baby grows up, it'll take your wallet. So in that way, it's taken from both of you. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, he
Holy
takes
shit.
after me.
I just have another tab. The "You Are Not the Father," and it's the guy doing the backflip.
I have not seen that one. I have not seen that
Oh,
one.
you
How
haven't?
about
Wait,
how about we
here.
play that a little bit later?
Yeah.
How about
I'm just gonna send that to you right now.
yeah. How about you send that to me and we play it a little bit later?
Okay. Do you have any other like media clips and stuff that you wanted to?
Not necessarily. I was just going to pull up a tweet over here that I had shared with you earlier, because there are a couple more points that we wanted to get into with this. And let's see over here. So let me sort of set the stage for you here. So there was a woman on Twitter. That's the first mistake here. And so basically there was this whole like, it's not really a huge argument, but basically she was listing out the reasons for why women aren't getting married today. And so, I mean, we can read this, but there's a response that we would read to that, which kind of explains, or it adds a little bit more context that would probably be relevant, at least to our discussion. And I can kind of connect it to why that's the case. But, first of all, we had this tweet from Liberty Anders, and she says, why women my age aren't getting married. I believe she's in her mid 20s or somewhere around there. But basically, her points are witnessing more divorces than weddings. Okay. So, I mean, we kind of addressed how, basing these agreements around property titles and, sort of like influencing that to the point where it becomes more about that than the relationship is actually an issue. So, I mean, dissolution of the social structures that make marriage stable and advantageous. I would need to know what those social structures necessarily are. I mean, like, are you saying religion is one? Or are you saying like, what are the, I mean, I would agree the social structures. I mean, the social structure of, like prioritizing and, like having like, a happy family where, there is somebody looking after the children and they're not being sent to these government camps for their education, and they're actually being raised to be rational people that can have a happy life, So I would say, sort of, I mean, that's more of an economic cause of it, but yes, it does erode a social structure, if anything, which is, I mean, community. And, that's not to say that like, because individuals can still thrive within community. We're not saying that, individuals have to be their own island just because they're acting in their self-interest. But yeah, I would actually agree with, I mean, if anything, like I'm not saying these points aren't true, but we're just kind of looking, point by point, because like, there's obviously a not at the end there. But they haven't found the right guy is one point, which is actually going to be addressed in the next tweet that we take a look at. Non-committal men who won't propose. Sure. I mean, I do think that, this issue is not exclusive to women, in that, just because there are women who are sleeping around more than ever, I don't think that also means that there are guys who are actually less willing to get in a serious relationship and look for a lifelong person to be with today. I would not say that is just as common as it once was. I would not agree with that statement. So yeah, sure. The haven't found a right guy part is one we'll get to. But anyway, not thinking they're going to be hot forever. There's this whole thing about basically like women sort of sleeping around for a long period of time before they hit the wall or as they're approaching this, they want to find the right guy for them. And they're like, basically like, oh, well, now I need the rich guy that'll take care of me and like accept me for who I am and, not care about who I've been with before and all that. So, I mean, why is that the thing that you're saying? It's not necessarily, let's see, not a single woman is unaware of the fact that she will lose value in the sexual marketplace as she ages, or that her fertility is a ticking clock. Okay, fair. That's you're kind of addressing why that claim is the case. Let's see. So repeating this over and over is a cruel way to play on fears and drum up neuroticism rather than address our concerns. I know 0 women who have accepted or who've rejected marriage proposals. Well, okay. Well, that is a big statement right there, because as we're going to see, like the haven't found a right guy is kind of connected to that one. But yeah, no, I mean, I think there is definitely a delusion sort of push, as far as like the lose value in the sexual marketplace and like, not the necessarily like fertility one, though I think that has been pushed a little bit as well, because, there's been this whole thing about like career women who freeze their eggs and then like it ends up that they can't necessarily have the children that they wanted to have. It wasn't as successful as they had thought. There are cases in which, or I mean, I guess it's more of a common sentiment today that, women feel like they can be this boss bitch, in a certain period of their life before they want to settle down. And that actually like kind of does that is a sort of like I guess like that is a time preference issue right there, where they're sort of actually like thinking like, well, I shouldn't plan for the long term now. So I think like, while you can make this claim that like, technically they may not be unaware that they're going to lose value over time, they're not thinking that far ahead necessarily, or they're not thinking that necessarily like when they choose the career over the family planning in a certain amount of time, that, the fertility may actually be an issue later on, depending on how many kids they want to have. And so, one thing we have is a Jeremy Kaufman tweet in response to that. And he said, increasingly convinced that delay family formation is somehow psychologically related to social network size, cities, social media, etc. Women like Maggie have a mating pool much larger than existed for all of history, yet still can't find the quote unquote right man. And I mean, that also makes sense, that they're, if you really want to find, the right guy, it's not as if like it's impossible. It's not as if, and, honestly, women have a lot of options when it comes to like, selecting men, especially today, with how like, and like, it's just literally evidenced by Kaufman's point. I mean, he's sort of evidencing it based on, what things are. I'm just saying like it, his point is in line with how things are operating today. Right. And so, basically like he has a good point here. Now, I think, the whole like cities part of it, and social media could perhaps be something as well. But, at least with the cities part of it, what we're seeing is that, let me fix the layout here. Now, what we're seeing is that like, the states are creating these centralized hubs of economic activity that are basically fueling their political economies. And these are actually places where it's a lot harder to afford your living. It's a lot harder to essentially live the life that would otherwise be able to be lived outside of the cities, to the point where you are seeing a lot of the issues that we have discussed throughout the show be more predominant there because of how states are planning them. And so, yeah, I don't think that, Kaufman is wrong on this, because, I do think that there's a psychological effect to this. And I do think that, again, these are just things that are tied. And so, despite having such a large mating pool, there's somehow an issue of finding the right guy today. How exactly does that necessarily add up?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think I kind of disagree with everything you say there. I don't think there's really like that much to add on to it, but I think that like, yeah, I think just like a lot of like what we're dealing with is just I think a lot of it is caused by the state, but I think just, yeah, I mean, I don't really have much honestly much to disagree with you on there. I think you got it spot on.
Right. All right. Let's see what we got here. So, oh yeah, okay. So I guess a couple of points I wanted to bring up on this actually. So, economic changes, we can actually go into some of these. Like, yes, changes in cost of living, and obviously that has to do with like states' restriction on who can build where. And so obviously like the market can't essentially let it be to the point where people are finding actually far more affordable ways of living, because the fact is like property is very controlled, and so you need this decree from the states to say, oh, you can build here actually. And so that if they want to limit it because they don't view it as in their interest to their political economy, well, now rent's going to go up, or cost of living in general is going to go up. Other things other than just rent, your literally because the state has this imposition of currency, now we're finding it to be the case that, the dollar is not as valuable. And then you go to the store and you can't necessarily buy as much with that same dollar as you could before, right? Back in my day, things used to cost, pennies on the dollar, but basically, healthcare as well is something that's been pointed out even on the show. We had the example given, and I think that was Long that actually, that is being referenced when this is being referred to, right? Because he's the one that wrote about this, that basically, like, wasn't it him that said, like, the man could afford, the healthcare for the entire family based on one day of his salary from the entire year?
Oh, really?
Wasn't
Yeah.
that the case?
Yeah.
I thought you would have referenced this as well, because I know Ignis had.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. I do remember that because I haven't thought about that article in a while. But yeah, I would need to look back into the sources of that. But I mean, even if those claims are exaggerated, I wouldn't be shocked if that's actually like what
It
would
definitely
happen.
wasn't expensive as it is now. And that's not to
Oh
say,
yeah,
oh, well,
for
this is
sure.
proof of that. I'm just saying that, like, we're not necessarily surprised if it is, that is definitely the case, because of how much you can see the increase in prices actually take place after state intervention. And so, yeah, I mean, that is obviously just an issue created by the state. And, another thing, I guess not really on the necessarily economic part of it, but to an extent it actually is. But women, like, and I even discussed this before, like, women are looking for a man that they can look up to and respect. They still yearn for a man that can provide, like, basically this optimal relationship dynamic, but not necessarily because of the dynamic, but more so because, essentially kind of because he can provide financially, right? And he can provide for her, and a potential family. So essentially that is, providing for the dynamic in a sense, at least, if you maybe want to call it superficial just because or transactional or whatever, just because he's the one that's, paying for everything and there's not much more to it as far as family necessarily, then, whatever. But, there is essentially a recreation of what is being looked for when it comes to these like top guys, this like top percentage of men actually seeking out women that will, like, be the types that are just the supportive ones. They're looking for somewhat like more that are displaying traits of traditionally feminine women, and they're looking for a man that can provide, so essentially I had a bit of a Tucker moment in the way my voice went up there, but basically, they are essentially still seeking out this same dynamic, because they're understanding that, or at least they're, in whether intentionally or not, or like whether consciously or subconsciously, they're understanding that this is actually an optimal way of interacting with the other sex when it comes to, a relationship. And so, yeah, I would say, like, despite there being these economic problems, essentially those who are still able to provide that sort of life, this is a desirable state for both men and women.
Yeah, for sure. And I think we honestly covered a lot here.
Yeah.
Like I think we covered probably quite a bit more in depth than, like, I was even expecting to go into. So
Yeah, I'm going off of some of the notes I wrote, and then I'm just expanding on them as I go, kind of like thinking it out and just kind of connecting it to a lot of what has been discussed before. Now, one last thing I actually wrote about, and then we can just start getting to chats after that, and we can check out this guy's backflip on "You Are Not the Father."
Oh yeah.
But basically, one thing I had just written about, because we were discussing it, was birth control, and that actually is like offsetting the actual family planning. But the thing with it is, and just like, let's say, like, porn is being pushed on, like, young men. Essentially, I don't necessarily know that I'd say, like, the porn industry, because it's a little difficult to see their exact tactics, though. It seems like, they might have an interest in getting their customers a little early, just because those will be the people that are hooked on it. But the problem is, when there are younger and younger men exposed to it, they actually are becoming a lot more hooked on it than the men that may just, find it later in life, or maybe just haven't been exposed to such extreme, visuals at such a much younger age, right? So in that same sense, younger women are being prescribed birth control, and this is like sort of this one is actually like a in the interest of the state, because it's in the interest of the pharmaceutical industry, and essentially, they're selling more drugs by putting more of these girls on birth control, and it's screwing them over as far as health. And more women are waking up to this now. Good, good, but.
Mm-hmm.
For the longest time, at least for like recent history, I should say, not for the longest time, but for recent history, this has been something that's been more and more common, where women or young girls have been put on birth control, essentially saying, like, it'll help, balance, this and that and whatever, you have an acne problem, take this, you have this, like, you have period cramps or something, take this, and essentially, it's not even, It's like I think it was like progestin rather than progesterone. You said
I
what?
think you're cutting out here.
Am I good now? Am I good now?
Okay, now you're good.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, anyway, I'm wrapping up on this point, and we'll get to some chats, and then we'll get to all that soon. But basically, my final point here is just, when it comes to sort of like this imbalance of hormones, yes, it is unhealthy, because what's happened here is it's not just like a progesterone, like it is a progestin, which actually does, I believe it actually is increasing the estrogen. And yeah, as Zach's saying, too much estrogen causes cancer. You should read into Ray Peat's work, because he actually describes a lot of the problems with excess estrogen, including seizures. That can be a problem of excess estrogen, because you're retaining water, you're not having as much blood sodium. That is causing seizures. If anything, like you're a lot of hormonal issues, or I mean, at least it would essentially be the complex of somebody in a stressful state to be high estrogen. It's causing people to be erratic, and so it's not good to have an excess. It's actually masculinizing if you get it at the wrong time. So women that have too much estrogen would actually be more masculine than those that don't, as opposed to the ones that would have just like the right amount of progesterone, which would actually be the proper thing to have, which, as a female hormone, and I mean in general as a hormone, it reduces the excess of estrogen. So I mean, right. The more you know on that. Let's get to some chats here real quick. Let's see what we have. Let's just skip past. Actually, let's go a little bit up just to see what we missed. I think we had one from JC that I found kind of funny. Let's see if I can find that. Let's see. Now I'm just scrolling from the top. My bad. Let's see. I think I missed that. I don't see it. It just had to do with like, why not sell AI, stuff on OnlyFans exclusively and make money from that. And I found that kind of funny.
Oh, yeah.
And then I think like oddities and rarities, I believe, was the one that's like, how do you know what's on OF or something in one of the chats. Now I'm just like remembering the chats and giving them out. But yeah, no, right. that was I found those funny. Let's see. Why would they get married when there's, or this is Zach, why would they get married when there's no need for resource fidelity of a man in this new era of clown world? I mean, I still think like there is, at least if there's a man who can provide as much as like the top percentage of guys do. And that's why you see that still being the case. And, in a world where, not necessarily everybody has to work, and especially not as much as they do now, I feel like you would see at least somewhat of a return to that. Not necessarily completely, but I would say like, somewhat, because there's less economic pressure on people to actually bring two incomes to the household. So people who want to create families would actually be able to spend more time with the children at home and wouldn't have to go work a job like for 40 hours a week, even if you are the wife. So, right. Yeah, I really think that's just, I mean, again, it's like product of modernity because of the state, right? We've gotten to that this whole time. Pretty obvious by now. Hell, these bitches don't even need a man's sperm anymore with the rise of AI and human cloning experience. What? I don't know what AI has to do with the reproduction, but unless you're saying like, because you said sperm, you didn't just say need a man or, for pleasure or whatever. So I don't know. Let's see what we have here. Oddities and rarities. All of this conversation is irrelevant if you realize that young women's choices nowadays are entirely based on the actions of Taylor Swift. So just observe what she does. I mean, didn't you see that thing with Taylor Swift where she was saying like, get cats? If you feel lonely, get cats. Yeah. Wasn't that real?
Yeah. Yeah.
That wasn't AI, was it? She really said that?
Yeah, she really did.
That is crazy. She's telling women to be lonely cat ladies.
Right.
Yeah, that's great. That's just that. What a great model. What a great role model. If Tay-Tay doesn't have a child, we can predict population collapse. Yes, yeah, I think probably. Taylor Swift getting married and having a kid would be the best thing for us, like for women in general, and then by extension to that, men. It would be incredible for I was gonna make a little bit of an edgy joke of who would be incredible for. What I'm not gonna say what people. But anyway, I'm just saying, like the primary audience of Taylor Swift happens to be a certain demographic. Let's see what we got here. We got JC saying at Legacy Zach, bully Huh? Oh, by the same token, wouldn't that also mean men don't need a woman's eggs or womb anymore because of the rise of artificial womb technology? I mean, I don't know that I would want to have a kid without a woman. I just don't know that that is something like that I would want to do. I mean, if it came down to it, and I'm like, if I could choose the sex of the kid, and I'm not like a gay couple or anything. I'm just saying like to have somebody that could like be my like apprentice. I'm saying like I would have like a male child for that reason, not for the gay reason. It just seems like they're having a lot of male kids, like as far as who they adopt. I'm just saying, but
right.
Let's see what Zach says. Taylor Swift isn't suited for motherhood, so humanity will be extinct soon enough. Okay, that's fair. Yes, it comes to down to resource versus sexual reproduction, sexual/reproduction fidelity with career quote unquote women nowadays, and easier access to ways to freeze eggs. Men are relayed to second class citizenship. I mean, like it's very egalitarian, and I guess like there is a way in which men have been put down. I don't know if I'd go that far, right now, though. I mean, like there are ways in which you could see that, like men have been overwhelmingly cucked, and it's not the case that like let's return to the imposition similar to what they have in the Middle East with how men and women are legally treated, but it's more so like how about we get back to a case where there is mutual respect. And obviously, I mean, my case is that stems from when the man is essentially the leader and somebody to be looked up to in a role model for the future children, and the woman is the supportive one, and the one that is the feminine one, and the one that is I would say by extension of that femininity, the one who is engaging, as Ayn Rand would say, in hero worship. I think she had a point there. And so, basically not, and as Rand said in that article that I read, it was not treating the husband as like it was like a pal, mother, sister, like it was something like that. Like, basically the woman not treating him like that, or not being that to him. Oh yeah. It was the woman not being the man's pal, mother, sister, or leader. Like not her being that to him is essentially like a trait of femininity. And I mean, like I'm just saying like that is not the inherent case for it. That is more so just like a description of what is already, sort of like being displayed by what I'm already saying prior. I'm just saying that would be sort of the conclusion that you would draw from what I'm describing, rather than just it itself being a proof. Let's see. So, oh yeah, we had that already. TBH, this is JC. TBH, as much as I can't stand Swift, people were getting cats long before she said that. It's just the problem of her telling that to young women that this is a good thing to do if you're lonely. Like that is the good solution to get. It's perpetuating it. Let's see. We have oddities and rarities saying, or maybe in the future, AI will be able to take Taylor Swift's DNA and make women be able to give birth to her. No, we are not doing that. We are not doing that. In which case, us men are screwed. True. A baby version of Taylor Swift implanted into the womb. Okay, we got chats go out of the way. Ancat, do you have this video?
I sent it to you on Discord.
Can you send it in the private chat just so I can pull it up easily here? I don't have the Discord on. It's a different computer, and there's just a lot different about it. Yeah. So this becomes a common issue for me.
Yep.
Oh my god, I saw saw one frame of it. That is beautiful. That was beautiful.
Just play it. Just play it.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to get to it. Now there's an ad. Hold on.
Okay.
It's skippable. Don't worry. Okay, hold on. We're almost there. I'm about to pull it up.
Cool.
Oops. Okay, so let's add that. There we go.
When it comes to 8-month-old Brian, Chiari, you are not.
She's running.
I want to play the one Can I Millie Rock real quick too.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Okay. That one was really good, I feel. Here. Let me Oh, I guess it's a short on this one. Let's see it.
You are not.
Told you.
What?
Told you, bro.
Are you serious?
Told you. Can I Millie Rock?
Yeah.
I like how he like asks the question, then he just does it anyway.
Yeah, he doesn't care. He doesn't need permission. Let's see. Bitches be lying like always. Have you seen the one where I mean I don't know how fake some of these are, but have you seen the one where it was like this woman celebrating after the guy was found not to be the father? It was
No.
like she was basically like, she was like cheering at the fact that this guy actually isn't the father, and the guy was like just breaking down about it. That was crazy. I mean, look that up on your own time, because we're kind of wrapping up here. But yeah, I mean, any concluding thoughts on this? Because I feel like we've covered so much already. I like the chat that we've had tonight. It's been great for a Saturday night, honestly. I'm glad you guys all showed up. But yeah, Ancat, what have your thoughts been on this stream overall? Any concluding thoughts? Anything you'd like to add, for today? And I mean, after that, you could, well, I guess we could get into it after, but obviously you probably have some stuff to promote.
Yeah, sure. I don't really have any concluding thoughts other than just it was great. It was a great discussion. I thought we honestly got a lot more out than I was, and again, initially anticipating. So
it seems like it's always like that.
Good. Always with that, yep. And then yeah, as far as content goes, still working on the history video. I said that it would be out in April. I think it still will be, but I currently just haven't been in a headspace.
Didn't it come out on April 1st?
Oh yeah, right. Yeah, I did post an announcement that actually it is secretly out on my Discord channel. For April 1st, the 1st of April. Some would call it even April Fools. So keep that in mind.
I would call it Trans Day of Visibility.
Okay.
Hey, now let me just say real quick. I took one for the team. Joe Biden, he came to me and he said, Ahmed, I need your help, champ. I need your help, sport. And so I need your help, champ. I need your help for America. And he said to me, he wanted me to actually be the one to make them invisible again after Trans Day of Visibility. And I decided, you know what, Joe, this is for the country. I'll do it.
Our country is so back.
Yeah. Now, I unfortunately had to do it for Joe Biden just because the request was so good. Unfortunately, it wasn't Trump asking me.
Unfortunately.
But yeah, no, I mean, you had you were talking about your promotion of your video.
Yeah, and that's honestly it. I expect it to be out in April, but it could be in May. But I wouldn't expect anything at the moment. But I promise you, it is being worked on just very slowly. So.
Okay, when are we starting an OF?
Tomorrow. Or tonight.
Yeah.
We'll do we'll do a collab OnlyFans.
No, I'm actually busy tonight. I have another thing I'm recording.
Oh no. Well, I mean, you can't take any pics,
Well, I may have like an hour in between. We could do that.
Actually, no, we should set up an OnlyFans and have people subscribe and then it just be episodes of Civil Offense.
We should do like some sort of like libertarian content. You know how like Martha Bueno was actually doing like that for the campaign where she was like saying like the dirty nature of politics or something like that. I feel like we could do something like that where we're talking about like, well, you may think the state's actually corrupt, but actually that's inherent to its organizational interests. And here's why. And so we just go into that. Like we just start talking about like the dirty, filthy stuff about the state,
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. We give them exclusive content that they cannot find anywhere else. And we're still meeting up to that promise. But yeah. So any other things about like your channel or your Discord?
No, not yeah, if you wanna join the Discord, you can my channel will be linked in the description, and then in the description of any one of my videos you can find my Discord username. You friend request me, I send you an invite, and you get access to the Discord server. So we have a good time there, discuss some more topics that you're probably not going to hear on either the podcast or my official video essays. So yeah, looking forward to the history video, and then after that I don't know, honestly. I have a few ideas, but I'll leave that as a secret for now.
Yeah, and honestly, I mean, if you want to, like I said at the beginning of the show, if you want to DM me on Discord at anarcho-nitrain, that's NIGHTRAIN, like the Guns N' Roses song Night Train. But yeah, let's see, what do we have here? Let's see. JC says when you do that, you should also use a sexy VTuber avatar with a feminine sounding AI voice to deliver said content. Jeez. Yeah, I don't know if we're going to do that, but yeah, no. But anyway, if you want to DM me to get on my Discord server as well, you can go ahead and do that. Just we'll talk first a little bit, like Ancat said, it's that whole process of screening. You don't want people posting BBC or anything like that. We hate British people. And so, no BBC in the channels, but maybe Ancat, I think he actually has some channels for that. But yeah. So, I mean, you can find me YouTube, I mean, I'm right here, Civil Offense. I mean, I'm streaming on Rumble and X. I don't think that the Instagram one, I don't know if it went through. I mean, it showed it up that it stopped streaming there after an hour, which it said it would, though I couldn't really see it on the Instagram when I checked. And I wasn't just checking from my own account. I was actually checking from a separate account just to verify, but I didn't see it there. So I don't know if we actually did have our first successful Instagram stream. We do have our first successful Twitter stream right now, still going until the end of this. So at least there's that. We still got one more platform down. But yeah, just like, subscribe, all that. And yeah, remember that Civil Offense is the key to winning. Thank you.